Ben Parks from... Where are you from?
Salt Lake City, Utah.
What do you think... if you had to come up with 1 or 2 sentences about what Comic Frenzy is all about, what would it be?
One sentence that would describe Comic Frenzy would be the following. An emotional release. That's more of a phrase than a sentence.
I'm really on the team because my psychiatrist said that it would be good for my mental health. Oh my gosh. Okay, my name is Christian Busaith. I'm from Elk Grove, California. I'm a senior studying organizational communications. I live in Briarwood, number 179. And getting together to enjoy each other's company, to entertain people, I think that's what comedy's all about, am I right? Comic Frenzy. Okay, what's the question again? No, what's the question?
Oh my gosh! Why did I think this would be possible?
It is. I just forgot the question.
I just want some positive publicity from Comic Frenzy. And I'm going to cry.
No, really, what do you want? What was the question?
What's Comic Frenzy all about?
Okay. Comic Frenzy is all about allowing people to come to an event. Please don't cry. Okay. Comic Frenzy is all about allowing people to come together to enjoy comedy, to forget about the stresses of life, schoolwork, bills, and whatnot, to forget about the pressures of the world, and just to have a good time, to release some positive energy.
JD Taylor from...
Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Communication major, organizational communication major. I have a theater arts minor. I'm 24 years old. I was born in Canada and later moved to Colorado. And from there, after 9 years, we moved back to Canada and then to Ohio for a couple of years. Oh, I'm a senior again. Comic Frenzy is dedicated to just having something to do for those people who are stressed because of the girl they asked out that said no, or the test that they failed on. You could forget about it, come and laugh and have a good time, and start afresh a new week after some good, clean fun.
My name is Brant Wadsworth. I'm from Sugar City, Idaho. My major is theater with a minor in psychology. Well, university studies with theater minor, psychology minor, and a theater performance cluster. What else did you want to know about my personal life? I'm a senior. I do Comic Frenzy mainly for the creative art form of it because it increases ability to follow impulses and makes me a better performer and more access to creativity. I do Comic Frenzy because of the creative potential that it has. I love the idea that you can use structure to create an art form spontaneously and use it to entertain and to do other things. So that's my main reason why.
Like, what's your favorite type of game that we play? You play.
I really don't have a favorite game. I really like the story games that we play where we have to work as a team to come up with one cohesive story and finish each other's words. Those are a lot of fun.
James Best. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm an English major. I'm a senior. And I like puppies. I enjoy making people laugh. I've done it twice so far in 4 years. And that's what I like. Also, I think it's fun to create something new on the spot. I guess I'm interested in creation. But that's boring. I like people making people laugh. That's better. Improvisation is, your basic scene is just a regular everyday scene, something that you see every day that somehow can be made funny because every scene is funny. Meeting someone awkwardly, in the bathroom and having to talk to them, that going home and telling your mom that you crashed the car. These are scenes that are funny and we recreate for people, embarrassing, awkward, and that's why people laugh so much.
John Gagnon, sophomore, communication major from Stillwater, Oklahoma. I like Comic Frenzy because it gives me an opportunity to to just showcase a talent that I wouldn't necessarily have. It's also kind of a release for me. My favorite type of game is music game, mainly because I like rhyming. It's kind of fun. I do it a lot. I don't know. I think it adds a different kind of an energy and a different feel to the show. It gives a greater energy, and I don't know. I just like it.
My name is Justin Love, and I'm from Idaho Falls, and I'm a junior this year. And I currently don't have a major, but I'm working on it, thinking about communications.
You're new to Comic Frenzy. What made you want to try out?
Well, for starters, I have a lot of friends that are already in it, and that was a big thing. But Comic Frenzy is just really good. It's a lot of clean fun, and like my family, when we are together, we always do little skits and just mess around, play with each other's delusions. It's kind of fun. So it just reminded me a lot of that. Well, one that's just really easy to pick up right off the bat, but it's one of my favorites, is Symphony, just because you can do whatever you want and do some outrageous gag and get a laugh and not have to worry about dialogue. I like the jump out games, any jump out games like World's Worst or Waiter, things like that. Those are fun, pun games.
My name is Sean Feller, and I'm from Woods Cross City, Utah. I'm a senior, and I'm an art education with emphasis in graphic design major. I do Comic Frenzy because I believe that it helps release some of the stresses of class, and it also helps the creative juices flow. I think one of the strong points of Comic Frenzy is thinking out of the box, so they can watch for strange ideas or things they've never thought of before. Just have a good time. Just be prepared for that.
Adam Getterborg from Shoshone, Idaho. Major is computer science. I'm the piano player. I perform the music portion of the Comic Frenzy. Pretty much I do what everyone tells me to do. My favorite part is actually watching the great performances that everyone else does, and my favorite part is really being able to watch the great talent of everyone else.
You do your best show ever because you're like, this is my last Comic Frenzy show. But I remember feeling very sad that I was going to miss the experience, and I was going to really miss the people, my friends. We had become a little family, a weird family, and I loved it, every minute of it. And I was very sad. But at the same time, I wasn't scared for the future of Comic Frenzy because there were younger players that had come on and who were just as passionate about it, about improvisation and about the group of Comic Frenzy.
I mean, just like any transition, I guess, it was just the dynamic changed bit by bit, but it also was good in that there were still some of the old guard there. John Gagnon and Sean Feller were still there, and John had started it, so it was not a complete change and I think that new blood coming in is good.
Those first few semesters were so amazing that each semester I was concerned that when people would need to leave and we would need to find new talent, it's like, how can we find people as amazing as the people that I started with? And it was just amazing to me that we were able to find people along the way.
There were a lot of learning curves that happened because all of a sudden I found that I was I was seen as a more seasoned person, which is ridiculous because I had only been, this was my second semester, but because so many people had left and it just turned in that way. And so it kind of turned into this like, all right, I guess I'll fake it. And the more I faked it, the more I felt confident in it. And the more you trusted one another. We always were committed to making sure that we did the best work that we could, and that we kept up our rehearsals. And in our rehearsals, we focused on the rules of improv and trying to, it's really amazing when you think about it. We taught ourselves. We got together and we just did these self-taught things. Nobody came from outside, from Second City or the Groundlings or anything to teach us these things. It probably would have helped us. We probably would have benefited from it. But for what we were creating, we created so much amazing things.
2/3 of the troupe that was originally there was still there, and they were taking on new talent and showing them the ropes. And so it wasn't an immediate transition, of course, but it was about that point that Jordan Tate and Jeff Gonzalez joined the team, and my goodness, what amazing additions they were. They just really settled right in. You're just bringing on new talent, showing them the ins and outs of how it works, and then them creating their own masterpieces and things, that those moments where you can't help but smile and laugh at it forever anytime you look back on it. So it's just giving them the tools to create that was amazing to be a part of.
Every semester, students gather together to enjoy talent activities. Talent isn't just reserved for a select few. Anyone can get involved.
I was in BYU Idaho talent activities at the time.
Nothing. It's nothing.
What, that we don't know about him and Courtney?
Oh.
Hello, it's obvious.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Dan told me about that.
Okay, Charles, shut up and stay out of my life. Does anybody have the lesson?
What did I do?
What did you do? What did you do? Okay.
I said that you. Hello. It's obvious that you were dating.
Okay, but you don't have to bring it up in the front of everybody. You know, Charles, nice guy, but oh gosh, he really screwed things up. Yeah, he did. Okay. You want? Okay, I'll say it. I love her. I love her. But he just had to, oh, you're dating. You're dating.
Love you.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I can't laugh when you say that.
Come on. I mean, they already. And so I had the resource where I could start something new at BYU Idaho, and yeah, Mike, I got to know him during tryouts for Comic Frenzy, and he's just a good dude. I liked he was really funny.
I got myself a birthday present, and the reason I got myself one is because this was one of the things I didn't quite trust hint dropping to Hillary, and I'm not even sure if she knows about this yet, because it's just too technical. Like, there's some things you buy and you want to pick out the things, and if I try to hint drop, she might get it, but it might be wrong, and then it's awkward because then I have to try to act really excited and then return it without her knowing and then get the right. Well, this time I just decided to do it myself.
And really you can kind of feed off of him. And I just asked him, I was like, I can't do, it's going to be a lot to do this on my own. And so I asked him, and no, that's 100% true.
Well, because Academy of Comedy was like a intramural almost kind of thing, right? Just and wasn't, oh man, what was his name? Kurt Spears. Yes. Yeah, I thought it was awesome because Comic Frenzy, I don't want to say it was a clique or it was like a closed forum or something like that, but it was in fact an auditioned group, and we inevitably had to turn people away, and sometimes that was painful because you can't take on too many fresh faces, because then at that point it was a little volatile. I think if we had too many new faces, we would be stuck out there during a performance with people that weren't quite ready to be out on the stage on their own with others that hadn't the on-stage experience to save a scene if need be.
The only show in town right now is Comic Frenzy, and it's like, well, there's plenty of kids that like to do more than just improv. I just didn't want to limit it to that. But I guess that's what it turned into.
Thank goodness you're here, robot dancer.
Academy of Comedy, I think, was good in the sense that it was there to be a falling place for folks that wanted to gain those skills, and ultimately shooting for, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately the goal of anybody in Academy of Comedy, they wanted to come and be a part of Comic Frenzy. So I guess it's more like, varsity versus junior varsity, and both are skilled, but ultimately one feeds into the other, and I think that was a good resource. I wish, looking back, that we maybe could have mentored somehow a little more in the Academy of Comedy, and maybe sent liaisons to be an active participant or help, because that's where your next talent base is coming from.
It was in my second semester of being a permanent member when Academy of Comedy started. Second or third, I can't remember. But yeah, when it started was started by all of the people that didn't make Comic Frenzy. And it seemed like predominantly the main reason why most of the players there didn't make it is that, Comic Frenzy isn't necessarily about humor, it's about wit, right? It's about finding wit and finding beauty in life's circumstances. And so what made Academy of Comedy a little bit subpar was just that there wasn't any wit. It was all sort of slapstick and a little bit, crude or obvious, And so, but it was a bunch of people that didn't make Comic Frenzy, that started their own improv workshop. And where Comic Frenzy was a part of the theater department, they became a part of the activities department, and so they still had funding and they were still able to put on shows. And a lot of people on campus loved improv, and so Academy of Comedy was subpar for quite some time, until Comic Frenzy went to long form, which was a more intellectual form of improv comedy. And a lot of the people that enjoyed short form went to Academy of Comedy, so it started to do a little bit better. But yeah, they would, I think it was about 2 semesters after I went to an Academy of Comedy show, and it was sold out. And it wasn't great. It was nowhere near what Comic Frenzy was in its heyday. But yeah, there were those moments that I thought, it's okay. That's a decent improv. It's a 6 out of 10.
Well, come on. And I love them, and they were my friends. I actually do think I definitely remember, a lot of what makes them think they're qualified to teach comedy. I do actually remember that. But I think in my mind, I was like, well, what makes us think we're qualified to perform comedy? So I was just kind of like, I don't know. I thought, and I loved Mike and I loved Kurt, and honestly, I do think even if you don't have a knack for stage performance, maybe that's not your strength, but that doesn't mean you don't know the skills to perform. So I absolutely, probably in my mind, was supportive of it, and that's why I probably just didn't say anything, because I was like, who cares, guys? Let's just laugh and do a show.
Comic Frenzy was like, oh yeah, Kurt Spears and Mike Ramsey, they did kind of an FU to Comic Frenzy, and they're like, we're gonna have our own improv on campus. Yeah, but they looked at it as, well, kind of whatever, forget you guys, you can't tell us not to do improv just because we can't be in Comic Frenzy. So they started workshops in the Kirkham building, in the classroom. And, I did a workshop with Comic Frenzy before my mission where they had us in the upstairs room of the Kirkham, and they're like, we're Comic Frenzy, we're giving back, we're teaching improv, this is fun. And I'm like, yeah, this is fun. Then when I came back from my mission, Mike and Kurt were doing Academy of Comedy, and I totally studied that, and I learned all my improv from them, which eventually I auditioned for Comic Frenzy, and I already knew how to do improv because they taught me. But we were looked down upon a lot when I was in Academy of Comedy. I'm like, can't we all just get along? Like, what's going on?
I'll start my own Comic Frenzy, and we'll call it Academy of Comedy, and we'll do all the things that the activities department wants us to do, and we'll be the new Comic Frenzy. And so Comic Frenzy was like, oh no, like, and so there was this big competition because Comic Frenzy felt like they were basically being threatened of like, we're shutting you down, and they were like, but this is magical, and you shouldn't shut us down. And then someone else was like, well, I'll create something. And it was like, it just like really hurt a lot of people's feelings, and like...
Right, and that's interesting for me to think about, because it seems like it's easy to take sides. It's kind of like how Pokemon Go has come out, and arbitrarily everyone takes the different teams very seriously, and there doesn't seem to be a good reason for that, because Comic Frenzy can't do everything, they can't take everybody, but that just means that if they're the only opportunity on campus at the time for improv, then other people just have to be okay with that.
Right.
Or, it doesn't, so I'm just saying, the story, it makes sense that the story is like, well, we're going to be the better Comic Frenzy and play by the rules, when really it's probably more like, I want to do some improv too.
Right.
And I'm interested in doing improv, and how do I do that? And they just happen to talk to those people instead of...
Right.
Does that make sense?
No,
I'm just saying, I'm not saying that this isn't the narrative. I think you're totally right. I think the narrative of like, us against them and is like a real narrative that got passed on.
That is...
and felt.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right narrative.
Sure.
Like, I think you're totally right that it was probably, there's probably nothing malevolent about it from anyone.
Right.
But it was, I think, this feeling that just...
Some people got that feeling.
Yeah,
similar
just,
to
being stomped on.
Similar to the feeling that people who had been in Comic Frenzy before were resistant to the influence of Academy of Comedy that semester.
Right.
Yeah, so I had done Comedy Sports High School League in Los Angeles County, California, and it was my favorite thing in the whole world. And so when I went up to college in Idaho, I didn't, like, I had heard that maybe there was some improv stuff going on. And so my first semester, I had auditioned for Comic Frenzy. I saw them, and like, I had seen LA people, like, I thought my college troupe was pretty good, but their chemistry was out of this world. Like, this was back when they were packing the house, and they were sort of like this kind of, this faux celebrity group, or at least that's how they presented, and that's how I saw them. And I auditioned through, and I made it through all the callbacks in the callback show. And basically it came down to, they're like, look, it was between you, this dude who's about to serve an LDS mission, or this guy who is like, was the best man at the dude's wedding. And at the time I felt like shortchanged a little bit, but I mean, of course, right? Like that's just how the business works, especially with like such a chemistry tight group. And so, yeah, I didn't make it in that first semester. I was really bummed, and I just didn't really think about it. I got really into lifting. I put on like 20 pounds of muscle and, focused on church stuff and school, until I think it was winter semester that I saw like, hey, come try this new student run improv group. And I think had you just started that up, Richard, or was there someone else who had started those first couple of meetings?
There was Mike Ramsey and Kurt Spears that had started this workshop group through talent activities called Academy of Comedy. So they started training me for like a couple of semesters. And then I think I took over for the summer semester of that year. And so by the time I come back for winter semester, I think they might have had a hiatus of one semester. And I'm looking around and I think everyone else is gone. And I'm like, I missed this. So I'm just going to tap, spot back and just restart it again. So I mean, according to you and anyone else who came during that time of Academy of Comedy, it was my brainchild, but I had just been picking up the slack that had been dropped by the other people that were in charge before me. Yeah.
I think very specifically, we got to know each other through those tryouts. I for Comic Frenzy as well. And I think very specifically when I knew I was going to be gone, I was just like if anybody should be the next kind of take the torch from here, it was you.
Academy of Comedy is just a workshop where everyone can get together and learn how to do improv. Also, just have a lot of fun. You know what? We don't make jokes here at Academy of Comedy. We make funny.
Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. The suspense is killing me. He's alive! Thank you. He's alive!
Open to anyone who's interested in learning how to do comedy, learning the rules of comedy. It's just fun. Fun for the whole family. Fun for college students, freshmen to senior age. Anyone can come. We do pretty wacky things here, but it's all in good taste, all in good fun. Good, clean comedy. It's the best. And if you're looking for a place where to be accepted for who you are, and if you're kind of funny looking, or if you think you're funny, or you think that other people look funny, or you think that funny is your kind of thing, then come on to the Academy of Comedy. Kirkham 101, 8 p.m. Wednesday nights. Be there. We're having a show this Wednesday. Be there. Or be not funny. Ouch. Thank you.
I really enjoyed doing a lot of those things. I like you said, I worked with the Academy of Comedy. I worked with the just improv piano, where we just got up and did musical performance pieces without the comedy side of it, but then also musical theater. So there are just so many different options and venues, and I think the role in Comic Frenzy is that it felt like it gave us permission to do that. Comic Frenzy was like, when it was there, when we could see it there and see that people would enjoy and watch Comic Frenzy, we were able to say, well, maybe we can also provide some of these other opportunities for performance and entertainment, both to the performers and the audience. And a lot of those things never got to the height and interest that Comic Frenzy got, but it felt like Comic Frenzy needed to be there in order for those to even have a chance. And so for that, I'm grateful and will always be grateful to Comic Frenzy.
So I was living in Somerset with like the best roommate ever. No offense. It was Zach Atherton. And we were roommates my very first semester, him and I didn't talk too much actually, we were polite to each other, but we shared the same room, but we barely talked. Like, it was weird. But then afterwards, we became friends because I don't even know how it happened. We ended up being roommates again in Somerset, like 2 semesters later. I think he invited me to be roommates with him. He's trying to get a group, and I said, sure. And then I think it was like one Wednesday night, he's like, hey, I'm going to a comedy club or a comedy or improv group on campus. Want to come? And I was like very nervous. And I was like, okay. And I went.
My introduction to improv, specifically Academy of Comedy, was 2008, and I was introduced to it through my roommate and friend at the time, Zach Atherton. He very much had a strong interest in improv, and we had talked about the world of comedy. I think I was more interested in stand-up, but he definitely encouraged me to try it out and to consider it. And I think at the time there was what I considered the major leagues, which was Comic Frenzy, and then there was also the Academy of Comedy. And so we decided to go to one of the evening group sessions of that. And after I think maybe just a couple of training sessions and group sessions with the Academy of Comedy, I caught the bug and had so much fun and decided to continue with it through, I know for a fact the whole semester, but then I think maybe even into the next semester. So we were pretty young. We hadn't gone on our missions yet. So I think it was maybe 1 or 2 semesters before that happened.
Academy of Comedy was like, we're learning, we're still learning. We're in a little workshop called the Academy of Comedy. So you learn the steps. That's always how I viewed it anyway when I was there. It's like you could study through Academy of Comedy and then maybe you could hone in your skills to be able to be good enough to be in Comic Frenzy. But like you just said, a lot of times they just never wanted to excel beyond what they were doing, and therefore the format wasn't working. But there was a time where they were getting good, Comic Frenzy was getting back to good.
I just remember being really popular. I mean, that's not necessarily to say that at least myself at the time was doing any amazing sort of improv, but people just enjoyed it. I think it was different enough. And I don't remember how much Comic Frenzy was performing at the time.
Comic Frenzy first started with a group of students, and after a long process has become an accredited class. Brant Wadsworth is the professor for this new class. Most people want to know what will be different and what to expect.
A lot of people I think have been confused about what exactly this change meant, and really it wasn't a change. It was really something that Comic Frenzy's been trying to do for a while and just finally got put in place. And it's still very much student run. It's still very much the students teach each other. It's just that there's a little bit more of a foundation so that there's some more solid training. And
Brant was a member of Comic Frenzy for 4 years. His last year of Comic Frenzy was shut down because of confusion with who was responsible for the group, since it was student-driven. He graduated with a master's degree in theater at Kansas State University. Now he's returned and helped Comic Frenzy to become more than a fun time, but a learning experience instead.
Start out doing a relaxing exercise to help us bring us into the room, let our minds leave everything at the door, come in, focus.
Now we can expect a more trained and focused Comic Frenzy.
I had seen it in, I think, 2006, and then I'd gone on a mission, and I didn't audition until, I think, fall 2008, and didn't get in, and then auditioned again and got in 2009 at the beginning of that year.
And then it was taken back over by one of the original members after he came back from graduate school. And then
he had auditions, which stunk because I had finally become a permanent member, which I shouldn't have had to do auditions again. But I mean, I obviously had to for the new form. I guess apparently it's original, what it was originally set up for. I wasn't there at the time. But it was taken over by one of the original members, so then he reestablished some of the things that he wanted, which kind of is evolving us into long form, which is actually a lot harder, but a lot more rewarding. It's like a story. You can read Confessions of a Shopaholic, or you can read Lord of the Rings. Not to say that it won't be funny, because it can be, but it's very different. And it's a lot harder, but it's a lot funner. It's a lot more fun for everyone. And then you don't feel so cheap at the end.
Yeah, I was in it up until 2009, when it transitioned, when it became long form. Bit of a painful memory there, but it is what it is. When Brant came and felt like he kind of had to save Comic Frenzy. The only two people that weren't graduating were me and Davey Antablian. That was it. Everyone else was going in one semester, and so we were losing like 6 or 7 players. And so it was me and Davey, and we both auditioned. And I went and checked the cast list, and I wasn't on it. And I was like, "What the heck?" And so I texted Brant, and he said, "Yeah, let's have a chat. I thought you might be confused." So. And he sat me down and kind of explained how he was concerned that he had heard some things. He had heard that I was bad-mouthing long-form improv, and that I was bad-mouthing him, and none of it was true. But he didn't want. He knew this was going to be difficult enough without some sort of headwind, right? And so he thought that's what I was going to be, was some sort of impediment to what he felt Comic Frenzy needed to become in order to survive. And so we had a chat. It took me a little while to get over it. It was difficult. It was really difficult because Comic Frenzy really became a part of me for the 3 years I was in it. And so when it didn't follow through the 4th, I was heartbroken for a while. But you live and you learn and you move on and you get over it and you get on with it.
But then I can't remember what the dilemma was, why the school was changing, or something was in transition that we couldn't keep the class the way it was. It needed to have some sort of structure in order to be something that's accredited and could contribute to someone's drama emphasis in their major, for example. And so they needed to have a syllabus, and they needed to have a textbook, and they needed to have a teacher with lesson plans and things like that. And I think Brant was the logical choice, because otherwise our only choice was, okay, we'll disband being able to have it as a class, and we'll all just keep our schedules free during this time frame where we've been able to block it off officially as a class, and then just hope that we all have that free time to meet together and still continue. But I think the other dilemma was that if we did that, we couldn't officially utilize spaces on campus as for production and putting on a show, because we weren't officially a part of the drama department or the theater department. And so I think at the same time, Richard took us under his wing to officially make us a part of the department still, and let Brant spearhead, kind of have free reign to teach the class as he saw fit.
I think what happened was Justin and Davey but honestly, I wish I knew more about what came after me, but I feel like the biggest problem when you make a huge deletion like that is that you kind of lose the soul of what the team is, and that soul is like almost the most important part. It's like that pride and that glory held over from like the first iteration to the second, and then you kind of keep passing that on. And when you cut it off completely, you're really just making a whole new thing, frankly. And I mean, the real drama at that point was that Comic Frenzy, as I knew it, got shut down, and I basically got told, you're not on the team anymore. Yeah, and I've already told Brant what I think about that, and it sucked. And I think he's admitted to me now as an adult that, yeah, that sucked. What I did really sucked. But I had been on the team long enough. It was probably time to hang up my hat and go on anyway.
The fact that it continues on, that makes me happy, but I have to admit, there's not, like, if somebody were to ask, would you want to go and see the Comic Frenzy, like, perform? Yeah, I guess, but it wouldn't, to go and see Comic Frenzy would just, and it wouldn't depress me or anything, it's just a different thing now.
I think a lot of people feel that way about, like, their version of Comic Frenzy through the years, that they feel really defensive about it and like that it was really meaningful to them, and I feel like they sometimes have to defend against previous or future generations of Comic Frenzy, which I think every generation of Comic Frenzy has had like really great strengths and really big flaws. Like one of the big lessons of it's like Comic Frenzy is like the Book of Mormon, and like there are just these cycles that it goes through that you can learn from.
Oh yeah, pride
like
cycles.
The pride cycle.
Oh yeah.
It is the pride cycle, because the times, like the things that have done the most harm to any improv troupe, but especially Comic Frenzy, the times that have been the hardest have been the times where it's been pride at stake, where it's been like old Comic Frenzy being like Academy of Comedy,
Mm-hmm.
or old Comic Frenzy being like, what is this Brant Frenzy long form stuff? And then people after that being like, what is this short form stuff? Like that's impure, like improv, like long form is best. All of that is pride. And like there is huge value in short form and huge value in long form and huge value in having a leader and huge value in having no leader. Like the thing that has made it hardest has been when people think that the way that they've been doing it is the only and best way to do it. And I was totally guilty of that.
I think everybody was in love with Brant. It was the weirdest thing. People were like in awe of him.
Brant Wadsworth was the teacher, and actually I was living with you, Richard. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember living with you.
In Sunrise?
Yeah.
I tried to remember that. Just kidding. I don't know. But you were like, oh yeah, audition for Comic Frenzy, and you showed me some clips of Comic Frenzy, and it had recently changed to long form, and I had no idea what on earth that was. And I was like, Richard, I can't audition for this. This form of comedy is so abstract. Like, I remember being nervous, and you being like, oh no, audition. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we auditioned for Comic Frenzy, doing something completely, or Comic Frenzy was something completely different than like I was used to, then Brent Millett was used to, because he was also in Comic Frenzy and living with us. And we would do our homework together, which consisted of reading stuff out loud.
That's right.
And I feel like Brant, being part of Comic Frenzy under Brant, was such a like unique experience, because we were reading like Viola Spolin with each other and like having like what do you call it, like psychologically enhancing beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
But I don't know how great the comedy was that we were doing, but I don't think that was sustainable for Brant to do something like that every semester. Like it was such a he made it like a lot.
Oh my gosh, I love that book. I would read that because it's so readable for everything. That was like my favorite improv book I've read.
It's a good one.
Yeah, but like we kind of poked fun at the book, but we loved the book.
Yeah, for me, I thought of Comic Frenzy as a class. I didn't think of it as primarily a performance thing, even though we did perform. And at that time, Brant Wadsworth had been in it years before, had been part of the founding of it, and he was now an adjunct faculty member, and he really wanted to explore things and do not just games, but like explore scene work and kind of explore the acting component. And so for me, I really liked that. I feel like the benefit of using improv to explore acting is that you don't need to memorize anything. You don't need to wait in order to get to the work of trying to build a scene or react to things. You just try to let yourself be creative and start listening carefully and start making stronger choices. And so I really liked what he was doing. I liked being pushed to explore things, and it just facilitated being able to play around without needing to know anything. And so that was what I was most interested in.
That's when we got like Zach Atherton and Scott Mickelson involved. And so all of my friends that would later join Comic Frenzy, that's where we all met, was on the streets of Kirkham Building doing Academy of Comedy. And we had so much fun together, kind of doing it on our own, like Comic Frenzy did it on their own at the beginning. Then I finally, by the time 2009 rolled around, I felt confident to audition for Comic Frenzy. And I got in, and Brant Wadsworth was in charge. He had been in Comic Frenzy before. He was leading the class. And it was so cool. I still stayed in Academy of Comedy. And that's why there's this like animosity between the two. Because Comic Frenzy, once we were doing Academy of Comedy, they were a little jealous. Like, you can't be doing improv. We're doing improv. We're like, well, we're just learning. And they're like, but you're taking audience. And I'm like, isn't there enough audience to go around? But then I was on Comic Frenzy, so I got a little taste of both of those worlds.
Obviously, I think in the beginning, I don't think I realized the quality difference between the two, just because I was so new to it, and I don't think I had gone to a ton of Comic Frenzy shows. But yeah, I think, and I never was, I would say, an expert. I had fun. I think I had enough quick wits to be effective, but yeah, I think towards the latter half of the time I was with Academy of Comedy, it was very clear that the talent itself was drastically different. But to point out the difference, it was open to all, and so I think when you have that type of admittance to a group, you're going to have a wide variety of talent. And so there was fun. There were still fun elements to it, but definitely, I think when we started to try to do even live shows, I think we had to be pretty selective as far as who could play what games or what types of games we could play, because the quality of talent was not on par with Comic Frenzy.
I was nervous, but a lot of us were new, like amateur improvisers, and so Shiloh Nice and I were tasked with doing a two-person scene for the auditions, so kind of like a rehearsal audition scene. Said, all right, you are both clowns in this scene, and Richard has clown gloves on, so he can't use his hands, and you, Shiloh, can't use your voice or something. And so we were like doing this scene where we were trying to like pick things up, but my hands were not able to bend, so she would have to help me carry things. So I don't remember the specifics other than we kind of clicked, her and I think that's what got us in, is like we worked really well together. We're like, yes, man, we are clowns that can't talk or can't move our hands or have some sort of physical limitation. Riot.
So every time I was in a scene with you, I was like, I can't take you seriously. So when Adam wrote me a letter of reference one time for a master's degree I didn't get into, he talked about the moment with you and me.
Oh yeah?
Clowns in auditions.
Yes.
And I couldn't stop. I was like, and Adam wrote something like, and I watched as Shiloh broke down, but then pulled herself together, and I was like, is this a reference letter, or is this like me just like overcoming struggles? Like
I was gonna break. It's just gonna break down right there.
But I was like, yeah, I remember that. It like reminded me of the time we were clowns together.
That was so funny. He was giving us like stipulations, like I had gloves stuck on my hand, and you had like some other problem.
And then you couldn't talk or something.
Oh yeah, so we had to solve the problem of being stuck together.
So Richard was like,
he was emphasizing more like the scene work and the storytelling, and he wanted us to do improv that wasn't necessarily funny at times as well. So yeah.
Yeah, some of our best moments on that team were honestly just our rehearsals. We had some amazing, just, random Tuesday evening rehearsal where we were just in a zone, maybe doing some long form comedy. I even remember some dramatic scenes that were really beautiful. So that was the first time for me that I had done long form comedy, and it definitely pushed me in a place that I hadn't been before. Just because in my mind I had the notions about improv. I'd done it in high school, but high school theater, you know how that is. My ideas of improv were so limited, so it was really exciting to be pushed in that way and say, okay, this doesn't have to be this one way. Like, we can have a scene where people are crying and it can be real and moving and impactful.
Remembering to not listen with the intent to respond, but to actually listen, and listen with the intent to listen, and then respond to what you actually hear. And that's just a golden nugget for life, because in relationships of any kind, if you can actually listen to someone and then respond to what you've heard instead of being like, well, this is what I'm going to say next, then I think your communication in your relationships is a lot better. So those are the two little rules I remember learning in that class, and then that experience that I've just carried with me in a lot of different areas.
And the shows were interesting because I just remember our first shows, we tried to create this format that would give it some structure. And so we would switch between scenes very quickly, and then we would return to those scenes and kind of try to pick up from where we left off. And there are games like that, but this was it was a scene jam. It was like you do monologues, or I can't quite remember what we did, but we did a few things to generate ideas to be our genesis for the scenes.
You might been hurt, babe. Under pressure. You can't touch this.
T-U-R-T-L-E power. T-U-R-T-L-E power. U-T-L-Y. You ain't got no alibi.
YMCA. Going to stay at the...
L is for the way you look.
M-I-C-K. Go Mickey!
And so I just remember people being kind of confused. I remember looking out at the audience, and I felt like I saw a lot of people scrunching up their faces and kind of tilting their head. And it was just hard to understand what was going on.
Want to trade again?
Yeah, especially the first shows of each semester, we were kind of locked into this format, and Brant himself would say, clear, when we needed to clear. We couldn't decide when to clear on our own, so it was almost like we were, there was this circus master that was like, clear, now go, now clear.
Yeah, it was like that. And I just trusted Brant so fully. I was like, he knows this is the moment to clear. And I just was like, this is definitely probably working. And
I still think it was awesome that he was exploring, just like trying something new. It really was something new for him, and it was new for me too. But I just didn't know. That's just how it was. It was like very open-ended. You're not trying to think of gimmicks. You're trying to think about the scene, but at the same time, so many of us were so new, and this was our introduction to working on improv, that it was like we weren't. It took some time. I feel like after a few semesters, we got to a place where people really understood structure and how to focus on a scene and move it forward, and it really ended up developing in a cool way. But in these first shows in the first semester, we just didn't know what we were working on that well. It was so funny.
Tony, you know why I called you here, don't you?
Yes, Father.
And you also know why your stomach is hurting, don't you?
Yes, Father. You hit my stomach.
Love you, son.
Now, why did you call me to your room unless it were to hit me in the stomach again?
I can't remember.
I remember the one time doing improv. It was during a show. It was Academy of Comedy, and that Academy of Comedy was always dicey because they were putting first timers on stage like almost every show or like every other show. They'd have like a core group, and then the other half would be people that were new.
My mistake. I'm sorry. What's that? Oh, I was trying to shock you. That's quite right. I can shout elsewhere.
Union.
That was my mistake.
And I remember thinking, where are you bringing this scene? You are ending this scene. It's like a dead end. We cannot save the scene because of like the direction you're bringing the scene. And like, I remember being denied. I remember being denied by an improviser that had lots of experience during a show in front of like hundreds of people. I remember this because I don't remember most scene work for some reason, but I remember this scene work, like establishing there were crocodiles, and it was like a problem because we were there. And I remember him saying the crocodiles were not there, and he had lots of experience. And like, I just spent some time establishing that there was a threat to our scene, how we're going to get out of this. And you literally saying they don't exist. I guess it solves the problem. Like, I must be nuts.
I had been feeling at BYU Idaho so unseen. It was some sort of exercise where we had to just look at each other in the eyes for like a certain amount of time. And you know, in theater we do all these kinds of like weird exercises, right? But you know, I had a lot of like guilt and shame just from Mormonism, and like to have somebody just take the time to see me and truly see me, it scared the hell out of me in the moment. I was like, wait, I want to run away. What's going on? But again, it just gave me that place of like, I can breathe. This person's seeing me, and they're not saying like, oh, she's sinful or she's like a bad person. Like they're just seeing me and sitting with that, and there was no judgment, and that was huge for me.
I was on stage with Brant actually, and we were going with a scene, and one of the less experienced members jumped on and started to comment on the scene and just try and pull a joke for the audience, and it actually destroys the scene. But me and Brant combined our improvisation skills to discard her completely, which is actually not very good to do, but because we were more experienced and she was obviously just trying to get the laugh for herself, it was allowed, and it was one of my favorite moments. Sometimes your best friends or people you unite under just against a common enemy. I mean, you can cut that out.
Comic Frenzy interview part 2. Everything goes dark. Brant left.
So we have 2 semesters Brant, and then we get that instilled in us, but he leaves us high and dry. I have emails that say, I'm not sure of the future of Comic Frenzy at this time, but bye!
See ya!
See ya! And so I'm like, uh-oh.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, and I know our humorous thing, I think it happened after that second semester, which I didn't look back at dates until I started like editing shows and like putting them in order, but it's like we did winter semester, summer semester, and then in October we were doing humor shows. That's also when he left us. So it was weird that we are working with him outside of Comic Frenzy, doing Comic Frenzy shows that were called something else. I looked back and I'm watching, I'm like, oh, this is Comic Frenzy.
Oh.
We thought, I mean, did you think it was different?
It was, yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, but I liked, it was cool to be involved, and so I think I was just thinking about that. I was like, this is exciting, and this is fun. But yeah, it does, looking back, it was just kind of a messed up time.
It was a messed up time.